Welcome everyone to another Silicon Labs product podcast. On today's episode, I'm very lucky to have Tiago Monte come back again to help us discuss Silicon Labs' much improved mobile app called EFR Connect. Similar to the last episode where I discussed the developer experience with Michael Norman, we're going to discuss more improvements for the developer experience. And this time, EFR Connect and how it's helping customers by some of the changes we've made from their feedback. A little background on Tiago first. Tiago, you've supported our Bluetooth customers for years as an application engineer, really helping them understand our Bluetooth stack, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I spent 4 years in the Bluetooth apps team, supporting customers, creating collateral for our products, as well as training and all those kind of interesting things, following our product development and lots of interaction with customers for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, for our customers that don't know, I mean, that means you see all the problems customers are having. You're put on the front line to make sure that those things get resolved. And so you know what customers were having problems with and where their issues were at.
Yeah, of course, customers, when they come and contact the apps team, through the support portal or through the community, they don't come and say, hey, this is working really good for me. They always have some challenge that they're working through, whether it's on the hardware level, stack level API. So we kind of, you see those things firsthand, and some of them you can of course solve. It's some sort of user issue where they're not using the correct APIs, but then of course there's when they find bugs, you need to go back, report those, and help prioritizing to get those fixed and get those fixes out to the customers as quickly as possible, so they can move on with their projects.
Yeah, I mean, for our listeners though, it just means that you know your stuff. I mean, I got a guy here that has real experience, and so what Tiago is going to share with all of you today is coming from a very valid source. So thanks for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kyle, for the second time. So it's really good.
Yeah, so let's jump in. As I mentioned, let's talk about EFR Connect. And the last episode was very, very popular. So I think if you can do the same thing you did for the development kits and now talk about EFR Connect, I think it's going to be really great for the customers. Are you ready to talk about the EFR Connect?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go.
All right. Well, let's start with the simple question. I always do this just to get sort of the listeners to understand what we're going to talk about. Why don't you tell them, why do developers require a mobile app when working on their Bluetooth designs?
That's a great question, because sometimes the need for the mobile app doesn't come immediately to the Bluetooth firmware developer. But there's quite a few reasons for that. I mean, first of all, Bluetooth is very mobile centric. Many use cases are centered around communication between a BLE enabled device and a mobile device. So there will be some sort of a mobile app need, and also need to test the device from a mobile app perspective. But also, even when you have devices that don't have mobile app, you still need to understand and test them from the both directions. So you need to have an ability to sort of quickly test, as you're developing your firmware, you're putting your GATT database in your sort of behavior and business logic in place. You want a way to quickly access those features without having to write more code. So that's where a mobile app comes quite in handy. And we're talking about the mobile app that's a bit more generic, let's say, which is not focused on the application that you're developing, but it gives you the ability to test basically all the touch points on your BLE interface, so that you can have an idea of whether your feature that you implemented is fulfilling the requirements. But also actually taking a step back from that, also from when you're getting started, right? We supply sample apps with our SDK, and many of them have a mobile focused demonstration associated. So that's also a good vehicle for customers to sort of get started, to have immediate sort of tangible interaction between, they have a kit, they flash it with a sample app, they bring out the mobile app, and they can immediately do something tangible, whether it's reading sensors like something you do in the Thunderboard, or whether it's just getting a LED to toggle. That's already a very sort of powerful demonstration you make to customers, and for them to get started understanding how Bluetooth works, how the communication goes, and they have the sample app code, they have the mobile app code, so they can more quickly ramp up and understand the basics behind Bluetooth. So I think those are like the two main reasons why a mobile app is really quite essential for a Bluetooth firmware developer.
Yeah, and I think what you said there about having it available for them so they don't have to develop the mobile app, because they're embedded software people. They're focused on their Bluetooth design. So having that mobile app that is really known good, it allows them just to focus on their core, which is getting that embedded Bluetooth device working and not having to understand if the mobile app does everything they want. And I think that's what we're going to dive into is let's talk a little bit more into what Silicon Labs has done to help them use that mobile app when they're developing their Bluetooth product. So what has Silicon Labs done?
Okay, so maybe we could start with a little bit of history. I mean, mobile apps is not something new to Silicon Labs, not something we started doing a year or 2 years ago. It goes further back. When it comes to Bluetooth, we actually started with an app called Blue Gecko. I think it was existing since the first EFR 32 SoCs. I think it was originally made for a trade show in Better World, I believe, with some of these initial demos like iBeacon, for example, and a thermometer, and it kind of evolved from there. But it evolved slowly, and it was a little bit rougher on the edges, some instability issues. And this is where I can go back to my time in the apps team, because this was an app that didn't really offer that sort of developer experience that we're now trying to provide to customers across our kits and in Simplicity Studio. Sometimes there were crashes and things that didn't really make it so pleasant to use. So that was, it was clearly identified that we need to improve this mobile app, because it's actually pretty important for our customers, for our business, that, if you have a customer buying a kit, installing Simplicity Studio, flashing a sample app, and then he brings up the mobile app and things don't work, that's not a good way to get started. Not to mention that when you move over to the firmware development piece, you're trying to do something, you're trying to read data from the device and the app crashes. I mean, then you're not sure, is it the app, is it the firmware? So, we had to do something about that. And so we decided to let's refresh the mobile app. Let's also give it a more pleasant UI. Let's figure out, how the app, how to divide and what kind of main things we want to offer here. Give it a reskin. And this started, I think, mid 2019, that activity, and it resulted on a new app called EFR Connect that launched in March 2020, at the same time as we launched our BG22 devices. And the basic improvements that we did at that time, of course, I already mentioned the UI redesign, but it was really focusing on the stability part, the bug fixing part, and some of the features which are more developer focused, to make sure that those were a bit more expanded, had a little bit more flexibility for customers to find devices, to connect, to be able to interact at the GATT level. And so we had it quite widely tested internally. We even ran some internal events. I think you actually participated on some of those, where we just asked people to test the app, submit bugs. So we really took it, really close to a very, very important mission to make this app something that everyone would be pleased to use, and it would help customers end to end. So from the moment they unbox a kit to the moment that they're ready with their firmware to go into production.
Yeah, and I've seen it. As you said, I participated in the beta and the testing of the mobile app, but I've been involved in a lot of the customer workshops, and the use of EFR Connect and the feedback I've received has been positive. So why don't we talk a little bit about one of those experiences or improvements? You mentioned locating the devices. I know in the old Bluetooth or Blue Gecko app, it wasn't as easy to locate or hone in on the device that you were trying to connect with. What have you done in EFR Connect recently to make it easier? And I think that's something I've heard that it's really what the developers like. What have you done for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you're right that the Blue Gecko app didn't have a lot of options, and I mean, if you're a Bluetooth firmware developer, it's fair to assume that you might be in an environment that has a lot of Bluetooth devices. So when you want to connect to the one that's just next to your computer, it can actually be surprisingly difficult to find within all those devices. So we basically expanded things like, actually features which are, basic from a concept level, but they were really important. Like, for example, filtering. You can filter by device name. You can filter by connectivity status. Is it connectable? Is it a bonded device that you have that you're looking for? Is it broadcasting or advertising some sort of a known beaconing format like Eddystone or iBeacon? You can also sort your device list by device name, like for example, alphabetically. You can sort it by RSSI, so receive signal strength indicator. Of course, if you're trying to connect to something on your desk, if you sort that, by ascending or descending, you're much more likely to find the one because it will be the one with the strongest signal from your phone perspective. Also, when you look at devices that you find on the scan list, there's a much richer data set of information that you can access from the whatever is in their advertisement packet, the RSSI. You can also favorite devices, which is a feature we didn't have. So if you have, normally if you're a firmware developer, you will have a handful of devices around you that you're going to interact with 90% of the time or more. So you can just favorite those, and then that's another filter option. Just filter by favorite. You'll know that those 5 devices will come up at the top of the list. So you don't need to spend any more time just trying to figure out which one is my device. It's going to be so easy for you to just narrow down on that one, connect with, and you're ready to go.
I mean, people are amazed when they see it. And I'll tell a funny story. When we did a workshop, I think it was 5 years ago, and we had the sensor pucks, the original sensor pucks, and we had rooms of 40 to 50 people, and they'd all turn their sensor pucks on with a 4-character identifier. And I don't know, I think we spent most of the time during the workshops helping the people identify their sensor puck to their mobile app. And so, like you just said, having that ability for them to favorite or to do signal strength or some way to filter would have probably saved us about 30 minutes. So I appreciate that for at least for the workshop perspective. That was great.
It does sound like a cumbersome task to try to find that.
Exactly. Yeah. So the other thing that I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on is and this is something that's very brand new, is the log. So in our recent workshops, we've been able to have people go and look at the new feature in EFR Connect, which is the message log, or the transmission log. Can you talk a little bit about that feature and why that was added?
Right. I mean, it was added because, oftentimes we would see customers coming to the support and, they would have an issue with, interacting between the EFR embedded device and a mobile device, whatever it was that was running on the mobile device. It might have been their own app already. And we didn't quite get enough data sometimes to understand what was happening. We didn't have the same handset, or if we did, we didn't have the right OS version. So, and sometimes things only fail in a very sort of narrow combination of factors, a certain mobile phone. And some of those even, the chipset even changes across the region. So I'm in Europe, and if I have a customer from the US, they might have the same handset, but the chipset is a little bit different because the models change across the regions. So there was a need to sort of create some sort of a trace on the mobile side that customers could submit when they come to the support and say, hey, I'm having this issue. Here's my log from EFR Connect when I replicate the issue. And that will help sort of narrowing down, see what's happening, and more for a debugging capability, but also for the customers themselves, if they want to log certain activities, they can then export a log, using the typical export methods, email or a cloud sharing service as well. So it was important for mainly for those two things.
Yeah, it's been well received. I know that the customers have brought it up when they've seen it, and they really like it. But I think this is a good question. I think the customers now understand, a couple of the key features that have improved on EFR Connect. But why don't we talk a little bit about the competition? Sometimes it's easier for somebody to have a point of reference or a comparison that they may know about. So what are a few competitive Bluetooth mobile apps that we have seen as very popular in the past, and now we kind of modeled EFR Connect to either match or exceed those features? What are some of those mobile apps that if a customer uses those, they might be interested in using EFR Connect as a development app?
Yeah, that's right, Carl. It's actually a good observation. So of course, EFR Connect is not the only, let's say, BLE generic mobile app that helps firmware developers. It's of course very tailored to Silicon Labs embedded offering, right? It has features which are unique. But I think maybe two of the most popular apps that customers use either alongside EFR Connect or they've been using in the past are of course, the one from Nordic, the NRF Connect probably has maybe some of the longest history. It goes back quite a few years. And also there's another mobile app called, actually I forgot the name of that one. I think it's Light Blue. Yeah. So Light Blue exists. Both of those mobile apps exist on both platforms. And I think they're quite popular. They offer similar functionality so that they're mostly centered around the generic use case where you look for a device, you connect to it, and then you will have access. It will discover your GATT database, and it will have access. You'll have access to all those characteristics and services, which allows you to exchange data and sort of verify mostly the behavior of your embedded firmware device. So of course we look at those apps, and there's things that we look at improving within our own design. But we also have some differentiation coming. We actually have a new EFR Connect version coming within a couple of weeks, and we're trying to see what can Silicon Labs offer that's also unique and brings value to customers that our competition does not have.
All right, that's a good teaser for the audience. So in a couple of weeks, they're going to see some new features. We'll have to have you come back on, and you can talk about those new features that we're gonna have.
Well, we can talk about them right now if you want. A few of them, at least, maybe not.
Oh, all right, great. Let's do the sneak. What are some of those things?
All right. So actually, what we have today also, I discussed the browser because it is really maybe the strongest use case for the mobile app usage. But we also have the advertiser feature. So it also allows you to use the mobile app as an advertiser. And the use case there is basically the opposite. You have an EFR device which operates as a central, and it might actually connect to a second EFR device, which is the peripheral. But you want to still test them separately. So a good way to do that is using the advertiser feature on EFR Connect. So that basically allows you to create advertisement packets, with whatever content you want there, whether it's device name, TX power level. There's a long list of so-called advertisement data types from the Bluetooth spec, which you can add there. And then you can just say, okay, I want to start advertising. You can set your advertising interval, and then you have the ability to test your EFR as a scanner device. But so attached to that, what we're going to bring in the 2.3 release is a GATT configurator. So that gives you the ability to create and modify GATT databases on the mobile side. So with this, you can not just have your EFR SoC tested as a peripheral, we can also test it as a client, whereas the mobile app will be the GATT server. Normally, these roles are reversed, but you can also do this. So you don't have to write code in two places if that's really your use case. And one thing that we're bringing, which is actually quite neat to Silicon Labs, is that this GATT configurator feature. So we have this tool on Simplicity Studio. It's actually one of our differentiation also on the embedded side is having a graphical tool for customers to build their BLE GATT database, just by creating just almost like a drag and drop fashion. I want a new service, click new service, whether it's a adopted service or not. So what we're going to bring is that you can import export the XML file, which is the backbone of these GATT databases, between AFR GATT configurator and the Studio GATT configurator. So you can start with the embedded code, and it's something that, so if you're developing this server side and you want to sort of emulate that using the mobile app, just because it's quicker, and that's kind of the point of the mobile app, just making your testing faster than what you would do without the mobile app. So you can just export that XML, put it into a Dropbox folder, import that into EFR Connect, implement this GATT database, and then have your EFR that you're using as a client to test that and emulate it very quickly. So that's the number one. And then two additional things I like to call out. One is a throughput demonstrator. So that this will come with of course a sample app, a dedicated sample app on the embedded side. And that's also kind of goes back to when I was in the apps team, that many customers were asking, what's the throughput that I can get in BLE? Maybe that's something you've actually seen in your workshops, and there is actually no standardized way by the Bluetooth to SIG, let's say, to measure throughputs. So we're going to bring this for the first time, as a Silicon Labs implementation. You'll have a sample app and you'll have a demo, and then when you connect those together, you'll actually have sort of a speed dial where it will show you the throughput either between the EFR SoC into the mobile app or vice versa. And the reason why this is important is that when you read collateral about Bluetooth stack and performance, everything is about theoretical values. But then when you go to the real world, things are not are not theoretical. They're real. So it's good for you to be able to actually test, and the throughput can vary among devices. And of course, if you want to test things like, how does it vary with range, so you can just fire up the demo, start sending data, walk away from your device, see how that reacts. Then you have a better idea of what you can actually reach, within your application, within your specific use case. And then the third thing, and this is again something unique and something that we learned maybe in the past year and a half or so, is an interoperability test. So what this is again something that goes with a demo, a sample app demo on the embedded side. So it will essentially run a sequence of BLE operations. So it starts by scanning, connecting, discovering the GATT, doing a whole list of GATT operations, security tests, throughput, OTA, and then at the end it gives you a report. It says, okay, we did all these tests, and they've all passed, ideally, of course. But then if for some reason some of the tests are failing, then on the EFR SoC side, you can also collect data from the PTI, which sends out all the radio information into the network analyzer in Simplicity Studio. You can collect UART logs, and then you can come to our support portal and say, hey, I have this one device, test A or B is failing, and here's all the data. So that's going to allow our R&D staff to have a much a rich set of data into which they can narrow into and find what the issue is with this specific mobile device or stack. So these are the things that are coming, and I'm actually very excited because they're very differentiating, and I know they're going to bring a lot of value to our customers.
Yeah, that interoperability test sounds really, really important. Just to your point, being able to get a standard log of all those different types of interaction and then giving that to Silicon Labs for support will help. But I think even just having that as a base for an embedded product would be great. People could just not have to spend time on a robust interoperability test. That's great.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Well, I don't even need to say this, but I have it in my my plan. You and the mobile development team have done an amazing job. I mean, just from what you've shared with us on this podcast, I think our listeners would agree. The time that you've spent making the application better has shown up, and now I think all the listeners, I would suggest download EFR Connect, see it for yourself. Yeah. Before we jump to that, I mean, is there any other thing before we end this podcast that you think the listeners should evaluate to see some of the things that you've shared with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so one thing that, of course, the mobile app, let's say it's very geared towards BLE firmware developers, and that's sort of the one of the strong points of it. But we also have quite a comprehensive, very powerful set of demos. So there's kind of these two views in the app, and on the demo side, some of the things are, you could say, pure BLE. Like the thermometer example, this throughput. We're also introducing a new, simpler demo called the Blinky, which is, let's say the hello world of BLE. The same way that you print hello world in the BLE world, this means, blink a lid on your kid. So we're also introducing that one demo together with a sample app on the SDK. But we also have some demos towards one of Silicon Labs, main value propositions within the wireless tags, which is DMP. And one demo that we have there, so on our GSDK, we have a collection of lighting DMP sample apps. So this is, Zigbee plus BLE or proprietary plus BLE. So you can set up these two boards where one of them is a BLE node, so a DMP node, which means that you can connect to that node with the mobile app, and then you can control the lighting of that network where the other board only talks the other protocol. So you have a Zigbee board, and then you have your DMP node, which can be controlled by the mobile app. So as you toggle the lights from the mobile app, you can see them actuating on both kits. And the same way, when you control the lights from the kits, you can see the state changing on the mobile app. So this, I think, is a very powerful demo for customers, especially those who are not familiar with DMP, to sort of grasp the potential of our DMP solution. So that's one. And the other one, we also have a demo called range test. So that basically measures the RSSI between two boards. And one of those boards will also have a connection to the mobile app. So you can actually, in the mobile app, you'll have a running graph of the RSSI. And then you can just take that one board, walk away with your mobile device, and you can see that data coming in. So you can, just walk wherever the distance may take you and see how the signal strength varies as you get more distance between these two boards. So I guess the message here is that BLE focused, but also a very strong set of demos for the MP. And I really think that customers who are not familiar and who want to know more about the MP, this would be a really good way for them to get started.
All right. Well, wow. I didn't even expect you to talk about that. That's those demos. So just to clarify, there's the 2 tabs in EFR Connect, and which of those 2 tabs?
One is developed, the other one is demos, and you can see them quite clearly at the bottom of the app. So that's kind of the first thing that it pre-launches on the develop, but it's very easy to swap between them for customers. It's kind of a very fluid interchange between the two sides.
But adding those demos, before it was pretty light. So now you're adding the range test, you're adding the DMP. So you're adding more demos, which will be very, very helpful for people.
Yeah, exactly. And still sort of, having this, having that through one mobile app so that we know that customers will find everything that they need, but still allowing a separation that, customers can maintain focus on what they really want to do with the app.
All right. Well, Tiago, again, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been great.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. So if you're downloading the app and you're listening to this, also make sure to leave your review. It's very important. Have your opinion and any feedback. Use the Google Play Store or Apple App Store, and Silicon Labs is listening, and we're constantly, expecting feedback from customers and acting on that to continue improving our app, moving forward.
Terrific. All right. Well, again, I always like to thank our listeners. Thanks for taking the time to download and learn more about Silicon Labs. And until next time, everyone, stay safe.